WNYC TV presents Barbara Lee Diamonstein and...
Hi, I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein, and our guest today is Edward Villella, who, along with very few others, helped bring American ballet to new heights. He is also one of the most articulate advocates for the dance in our country. Thank heavens you've switched from boxing to dancing. You've also recently been named the the chairman of the New York City Commission on Cultural Affairs. Warm welcome to you, Edward Villella.
Thank you.
Why does a dancer want to be a cultural politician?
Well, I'm not sure that I want to be a politician. However, I'm very interested in culture. Naturally, that's been my life. And I'm very interested in New York. I've grown up here and I've lived my entire life here. I've worked my entire life here. And certainly, my estimation is that New York is the most vital city in the world. And I think that vitality is expressed in its art and its productivity. And not only the quality, but also the quantity of it. And I think that that's something I would like to continue to be a part of.
How do you plan to do that?
Well, I plan, first of all, to do a lot more studying. I think one has to have something of a political inkling or background, and I think I need a great deal more of that. I think the first thing I will do when we are officially, or I should say after we are officially sworn in, one of the first things that I would like to do simply is to make the entire idea much more visible and to give it a vitality. I think that the culture and the art world in this city has already indicated.
The idea of how important culture is to New York City.
To New York City, and also the idea that New York City's culture is not only New York City's, but the rest of the countries and the world. I mean, I firmly believe that New York is the artistic center of the world.
Well, you'll find no discord here. And I assume what you're talking about is that we are a national, international cultural resource. And with your visibility as a performer, and now a cultural spokesman for the city, obviously that message will be telegraphed in wider measure. But can you give us any specific instances how you plan to do that?
Well, I mean, just in a very small way, I will be certainly, I think it's the, gosh, I should have checked, but it's a new symphony, I think it's the New York Symphony. I could be totally wrong. I'm embarrassed that I don't
have to know everything yet.
Okay.
But we have the idea. There is a new symphony in New York, and what will you do for them?
Well, I will be at City Hall when there are certain ceremonies that are going on, and I will also make an appearance at their gala evening, and I have already been asked to speak at a number of functions and occasions, and so that's a very simple and small way, and that's the way I would like to start. That I think is the beginning. In my opinion, with a job as large as this, and I do take it seriously and think it's an enormous job, I think sometimes slower is faster, and I really think going back to my television background, pre-production is where it's at, and I would like to do a lot of pre-producing before we get into actual producing.
At least that which the larger public is aware of.
Yes.
Do you see the general focus and direction of the Commission itself changing?
Well, I think it will change simply by the fact that I am there, and Marty Siegel, who originated this post, certainly is a different kind of person. He is a very brilliant corporate man, and he has a very, very definite manner in which he works. My approach will be, I think, a little simpler, because again, I am not that kind of corporate person. I expect I will approach this with more passion, maybe, and more emotion.
Well, nobody ever accused Marty of lack of passion or commitment to the arts.
Well,
and
no,
I assume you don't mean that either,
no,
but
absolutely not.
A less contained, perhaps, passion.
Yes, I must say that I had a couple of meetings with Marty, and he is just the most charming man, and the most delightful, well-informed person, and he has, to this point, been just a wonderful, wonderful help to me.
I'm sure that will continue. Your background certainly isn't usual, either for a dancer or a cultural advocate. Why don't we start not at the beginning, but someplace along the way, you've been an engineer, a wrestler, a teacher, and now this advocate. Can you tell us about some of these incarnations?
Well, let's jump to the middle somewhere. When I was 16 years old, it was decided that I should go to college and not continue dancing. My sister was the reason that I danced, and she decided that she was going to stop. And of course, when she stopped, my mother decided, well, that was that. I wasn't serious, and I would not continue. And of course, my father was delighted because he wasn't quite sure that he would like to continue introducing me as his son, the ballet dancer, you see. And under protest, I indeed stopped dancing, and I did go to college. I went to the New York State Maritime College, and I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Marine Transportation. I also won letters in baseball, and I was also the welterweight boxing champion there. And
I think the most impressive thing of all your many honors that I've read was an article in Sports Illustrated that called you the very embodiment of athleticism, perhaps the finest athlete in the country.
Well, am I to respond to that?
I mean, are you still involved in active sports? Is that possible for a performer?
Well, no, not in the world of ballet. There are very few athletic events that we can partake of, and swimming really is the single one. Tennis a little bit. Other than that, really, that's about it. And you know, every now and again I like to get involved in a little softball game or something like that, or play ball with my son, but I can't do it seriously, and I indeed miss it. I indeed miss that kind of fun.
How did you transport yourself from the Maritime College to the ballet?
Well, it took almost 4 years, and it took 4 years of frustration, I guess, at not being able to dance, and the transportation was really the vehicle was the frustration, and the fact that I really knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I enjoyed going to college. I'm very happy that I went. I'm very happy that I have my degree, and my parents are very happy that I have my degree. And now I'm very happy that I decided, based on those frustrations and so on, that I would indeed do the thing, or at least try to do the thing that I felt that I loved the most, and that was to become a ballet dancer. And I decided I would give myself a chance, really give myself a good shot at it, and I calculated that I would allow myself about 5 or 6 years, and then if that didn't work, why I would look. I was trying to be realistic about it, and I thought if that didn't work, I would go on to something else and use my degree or whatever, and I'm very, very happy to say that it worked.
How long after you were with the company did you become a solo performer?
I was with the New York City Ballet about 2 weeks before I did my first solo performance. Within about 9 months or a year, I became a soloist, and within 2 years, I became principal dancer.
Well, being a cultural advocate is not new to you either. I don't know if it is widely known, but I guess it was for close to 6 years. You served as a member of the National Endowment on the Arts. You were a council member. And according to several of the directors of the National Endowment of the Arts, your period there would be characterized as one of activism and impassioned support for the dance in America. In fact, they talked, and we look forward to it, with great interest, about this expression of passion. Passion that, you know, had a direction. Your commitment as well to the treatment of artists, and I assume that occurred as a result, in part, of your own experiences in the Soviet Union. Is that accurate?
Well, yes. First of all, I'd like to say that I speak and have spoken with passion for dance simply because I love it, but also because certainly when I first started 20 years ago and even 15 years ago, dance was really it was the last rung on the cultural ladder, and we don't have a long tradition or history for dance, and especially ballet, in this country, and it is something that, you know, I simply can't live without, and I can't understand why anybody else can't understand that, I guess, and that's kind of been my tact. And the thing that that I noticed when I first got on the National Council was that people had there, very well-informed people, didn't have kind of an inside view of what the world of American ballet was really about and what it was like.
What is it really about?
Well, it's really about a lot of hard work. You know, it's not about 19th century romanticism, and it's not about the romantic curtain coming down and with a bouquet of flowers and going off to a lovely restaurant and being wined and dined. Yes, indeed, that does happen, but prior to that, of course, it takes 10 years to train a dancer, and it's not simply just working 5 days a week, once a day or something. It's working for 10 years, 6, 7 days a week, taking 2, 3, 4 classes in a day. And these classes are not just exercise classes. We are investigating our full physical potential. And again, that's something that's very exciting to me. And probably, again, what initially excited me was that I'm a person of movement. I have to move all the time. And as a child, I would never walk. I would always run. I'd never reach. I'd always jump. And when I first started in ballet, of course, I was repulsed by it. I was forced to do it. I was rather embarrassed about it. And after a while, I began to look at it differently because I suddenly realized this was much more than I had been exposed to in terms of physical activity, much more than any kind of athletic endeavor that I had been involved in. And it was something beyond not only the physical, but it became a mentally challenging thing. And I find a lot of sports are simply related to very good coordination and muscle tone, etc. But to be a ballet dancer, you have to have all of those things, but that's only the beginning. From there, you have to have certainly sensitivity, you have to have temperament, musicality, you have to have proper line and form, you have to be on a stage and take command of a stage, not only take command of a stage, but then make a statement. Not only make a statement your own, but also the choreographers, the composers, you have to reflect the scenery, the entire theatrical idea. So it became a wonderful challenge to me. And again, I must say that it wasn't something I anticipated as a child, but as I was growing up, I realized there was more and more. And again, that's what's exciting and wonderful about it, is there is always more. There is never enough, because it's an ever-expanding idea, an ever-expanding technique, and you are constantly challenged. And I find that about every 10 to 15 years, there's another level, another quality of the art. And
are we at one of those passages now?
Oh yes, definitely.
And
Absolutely.
How would you describe that in your own life?
Well, I would describe, first of all, Balanchine and Robbins, George Balanchine, who's the director of the New York City Ballet, and Jerome Robbins, who is the co-director. These two men, in my estimation, are the geniuses of this century for ballet, and certainly Balanchine, I think, is probably the genius of all time in terms of classical dancing. And I think that he's established where we're going. And just to be part of that, I found, terrific, exciting, and challenging. And I think that his choreography has demanded more of our technique. So he, by making these incredible works, has put demands on us to make us go just a little bit further each time. So the level, for instance, of the New York City Ballet over the last 20 years has just been phenomenal.
Sure.
I mean, the growth of that level. And now I think...
Sorry.
Now I would just like to say that I think the next level of excitement is going to be Baryshnikov. I mean, it already is.
That was the question.
He is, he is now setting the technical standard for the next 10 or 15 years at least. And I find that, again, it's kind of a lovely idea, a lovely pattern to see those things. And
well, that's generous and high praise coming from you, whose dancing is described, I guess, as the most masterful kind of technique. What is this new level of technique that you refer to that is being set? Well,
I think it's one would be able to draw a parallel, for instance, with sports. Years and years ago, the big question was, will anybody break the 4-minute mile? Now everybody...
What is it down to now?
Well, it's down to, it's in the mid-50s now. And but the point is that people,
it's a psychological barrier as well.
Well, the point is that now in any given race, 4 or 5 people run under 4 minutes. And
what's the counterpart in ballet?
well, the counterpart is that we keep extending. You know, our artistic abilities keep extending, and again, it goes back to the choreographers who are demanding more and more of us. And I think a Balanchine and a Robbins to use a talent like Baryshnikov will help to extend his abilities and find his full realm of potential. And I always think that over the years, certain companies, certain choreographers, certain dancers have brought the standard to where the next generation starts from. And I think
Who are some of those dancers in the most recent period? Yourself excluded, of course.
Certainly people like Nureyev, Makarova, certainly people like Patricia McBride, Melissa Hayden, Suzanne Farrell, people like that who have just evolved and have reached their potentials.
You've said of yourself that you're not a dancing man, but a man who dances. What's the distinction between the two?
Well, the thing is that people tend to think of dancing as a frivolous activity, and they tend to think of it as possibly overly poetic in terms of a real man. And I don't feel that. I don't sense that. I sense that it's a fantastic masculine experience to be able to dance. Not only to be able to dance, but to work within the framework of a given technique, a very, very sophisticated technique. And I also think it's very, very masculine to be able to just use my hands like that, just easy and gently. It took me 2 years to get my hands to be able to do that while I'm flying through the air and attacking, and my feet are pushing, and there's a great thrust underneath, but at the same time my hands are doing this. You know, and that to me is a great, great masculine sensation, to do something very easy while there's a great deal of power and energy underneath.
Are women not capable of doing that?
Well, they are to a certain degree, but certainly men have larger,
Is it not a question of control rather than gender?
Well, you see, it's also a question of taste and a question of whether you want to do that or not. You know, and whether you think that might be overly poetic. But to me, it's not. You know, it's a wonderful sense of manly grace.
What is your favorite role?
My favorite role, I would say, is the prodigal son of the Balanchine Prokofiev piece, or the Jewel section of Ruby section of.
Excuse me, but Ruby's was created for you.
Yes,
by
yes.
Mr. Balanchine.
Yes.
You talked about this. You know, at one point you said that you were somewhat reluctant, or had relieved your father that you were not going to be a ballet dancer. I think it's been quite some time now, with the dance boom of the last decade, that we've put that idea to rest, where it is not only acceptable but enviable to be a male ballet performer. Is that a rarefied view on my part, or is that accurate?
No, I think it's accurate. I think that when I first started dancing, there were 1 or 2 guys in a class of 30 or 40 girls. Now we have, for instance, at the School of American Ballet, which is the school for the New York City Ballet, we have classes of 40-odd boys. And these are boys from all over the country. It's not just New York City. So I think that is an indication that there's a greater interest in it, and it's not simply an area where just some really overly poetic people are only interested.
That, I think, is the least complimentary phrase you can use, I'm beginning to suspect. You've said at other times that, and this I guess especially qualifies you, for your exciting, crowded with activity, but less than enviable role as the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs, because of the numbers of demands and the obviously very limited amount of funds that are available. You said that you've always been involved with organizations that needed money, and as a result you have become, in many ways, an unofficial, and I guess official spokesman for the New York City Ballet. You are so clearly identified with dance and television, Please assure us that you're going to give equal time to the other arts.
Oh, well, sure, of course. Dance is my passion, but also art and culture are, you know, those are the things that I live by and for. You know, they're really very, very important to me, and I have to experience them. And it's I feel as though I'm cheating myself if I miss them. You know, if I go away for 2 weeks, if I go on a cruise, or if I'm in the islands or something, I really get restless after the 4th or 5th day, and I begin to wonder, well, first of all, naturally not dancing or being that active, but I'm really missing something. I'm missing those kind of things that satisfy me, and also my life is indeed dance, but it's also eclectic. You know, I do lots of other things.
Well, the dance itself involved with music, yes, and design.
Yes, music and design.
What are some of those other things you do?
Well, I've produced 2 shows for CBS. I wrote them, choreographed them, produced them, danced in them. The first one I won an Emmy for. Anywhere from there to years and years ago, I was president of the corporation of a discotheque called Author.
We remember that.
I remember Author fondly, many nights at 3 or 4 in the morning. So,
you still do that?
Yeah, from time to time.
How can you do that and carry on a full dancing schedule?
Well, I guess it's just a question of being able to allot your time, your energies, and again, really to know yourself, know your body, know how much energies you can expend and how many energies you cannot, and how many, you know, what the next day entails. I mean, if I have a matinee and an evening the next day, I certainly am not going to be out till 2 or 3 in the morning.
How much of your time is devoted to dancing now? And what do you see in your next days? And I'm not talking about your trip to Seattle to dance.
What I'm beginning to do now is start to limit my repertoire, number 1. And number 2, I'm starting to cut back on my performances, and live performances in particular. Really what I would like to do and to focus more on are the television productions that I've been involved in. I'd like to produce and choreograph a great deal more for television. And I would also like to do the same for films, and I find that a very, very exciting and challenging area. And also for me as a dancer, I've spent my life not only in a proscenium arch, but also on a television stage, and I'm beginning, well, I think I have a fairly good sense of what television dance is all about. And that's a new and exciting challenge. And
how to film it, because
yes,
apparently that is a very special technique.
Yes.
So that we can expect film and television to be a main part of your activities.
Yes, and I'm also finishing a book. I hope to finish that this summer. I said that last summer, but I hope to finish that
for sure this summer. What's it called?
It's
not called Dancing, we know that.
No, it's not that. It's basically autobiographical, and mostly it's about what it has been like to be an American male classical ballet dancer over the last 20 years, what it's been like to work with Balanchine Robbins, Lincoln Kirstein, things like that, and to get a really, to give a dancer's unglamorized point of view of what the world of ballet and dance is all about. That backstage flavor, you know, the classrooms, the rehearsal rooms, all of the years of training, and the moments where you really just have to cut things off, where you have to deprive yourself of certain things.
Would you advise a young man or a young woman to have ballet as a career?
Oh, sure. But I would say to look at it realistically, and that is, well, I guess it's like anything else, whether it's in a super artistic area or whether it's business. I mean, there are very few people who will become principal dancers. There will be few people who will become international stars. And I think that the important thing is to look at oneself. I mean, we have to look at our proportions, we have to look at our natural abilities to move, the quality of our movement, and I think basically to be realistic. And usually by the time one is 17 or so, you have a fairly good indication, if you're willing to face it, whether you will make it. And by that I mean past the corps de ballet. Certainly one's goal should not only be the corps de ballet.
Everyone can't be a principal dancer.
No, well that's the thing. I think that everybody has to look at things realistically, and a lot of dancers become very frustrated, and I think that once they realize they're not going to be a swan queen or a prince, they get very, very discouraged and depressed. And my feeling is that one should do it certainly with ambition, but also for one's own satisfaction, to satisfy oneself and to be involved in it for that reason primarily.
How do you interest young children in dance? Traditionally, I guess the Nutcracker Suite was the ballet for children. But Anna Kisselgoff, the dance critic of the New York Times, says that's a good children's show, but not necessarily a good ballet. Do you agree with that appraisal?
Well, I think it's a very good introduction for kids to ballet, and as far as a ballet goes, the first act is mostly mime, and there's very little dancing in it. But
That's
it's a
right.
charming spectacle, and it's perfect for that holiday. Big wonderful tree that grows on stage, and it's filled with children.
Not too poetic.
No, not at all.
She recommends Petrushka and Coppelia.
Well, I think those are excellent choices, and certainly Coppelia has our production of the New York City Ballet's production of Coppelia, which was done for PBS a little while ago, has I think it's 24 children. So it's a wonderful story ballet. It's full of toys, and it's full of dancing children as well. And I think kids can easily relate to that. And it's a lovely, sweet, romantic piece. So I would definitely agree with her that Coppelia, in particular, is an excellent introduction for kids.
And this has been a wonderful introduction to Edward Villella, our new chairman of the New York City Cultural Affairs Commission, whose life has always been filled, obviously, with adventure and activity, and we look forward with high hopes to your execution of this important new role. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein, and thank you, audience, for being with us, too.